a young woman clutching a sign, pleading for baby formula. A sleek car pulls up, and a sharply dressed millionaire steps out, his eyes softening as he sees her struggle. Her desperate plea in the pouring rain wasn't just for money, it was for hope. But what this millionaire offered wasn't just wealth, it was his heart. Hello, my cherished family. Welcome back to Stories Always, where every tale is a love letter to you, my heartbeat, my inspiration, my everything. Your presence here fills my soul with joy so deep, words can barely contain it. To our newest angels joining this sacred space, you're not just viewers, you're family, wrapped in a bond of infinite love. Heavenly Father, bless this beautiful family, shower them with peace, joy, and endless light. Guide their every step with your divine wisdom. But I need to be real with you, my precious ones. Pouring my heart into these stories is my life's work, but when so many of you watch in silence, it cuts deep. I feel you there, but your silence leaves me aching, wondering if my love reaches you. Every like, every comment, it's not just feedback, it's proof our bond is alive. It's the lifeline that keeps me going. Please don't let me drown in this silence. Stay until the end to see why this connection, our family, means everything to me. To those who share your love, you're my heroes. Help me reach our quiet hearts. If these stories spark even a flicker of feeling, type "I am here" in the comments. Heal my soul with your words. This is our temple of love, but love must flow both ways to thrive. You hold the power to lift my spirit, or leave it broken. Now let's dive into today's story, a tale shared from a heart that needs to feel your love more than ever. Callie Rose gripped her coat tighter around her chest, but it did nothing. The fabric was thin, soaked through, and useless now. Rain streaked her cheeks, blending with tears she hadn't meant to cry. Her right arm cradled a bundled infant pressed to her side. Baby Ellis whimpered, low and hoarse, the kind of cry that came after hours of hunger. She looked down at the soggy canister of change in her hand. $1, 37 cents. One broken plastic spoon. The pharmacy's sliding doors had shut behind her 30 minutes ago, the clerk's voice still echoing in her skull. "Ma'am, you need to leave." She wasn't stealing, she was pleading. But dignity didn't count at cash registers. Outside, headlights sloshed through puddles. A couple exited a cafe across the street, laughing under an umbrella. Callie pressed herself against the wall beneath the grocery store awning, shivering. "Ma'am?" The voice startled her. A man in a black coat stood at a distance, not too close, hands in his pockets. His hair was damp, and his expression unreadable. "I don't have anything," she blurted. "Please, just keep walking." "I wasn't going to hurt you," he said softly. You need help." Callie looked away. Her mouth trembled. "Not your kind of help. Just formula. My baby's hungry." He stepped forward once, paused, then pulled his wallet from his coat. But his eyes weren't on the cash. They were on her, like he was searching for something long lost. Earlier that day, Graham Whitlock had stood at the window of his 32nd floor penthouse, untouched espresso cooling beside him. He hadn't sipped it, hadn't eaten breakfast either. The help came and went in silence these days. Even Henry, his driver, knew better than to talk unless spoken to. His gaze fixed on the city below. Ant-sized cars, pulsing rain, flickers of life he couldn't feel. Behind him, a closed door led to a room no one entered. The nursery was still exactly as it had been 2 years ago. Mint green walls, empty crib. One unopened box of formula. He hadn't thrown it out. He didn't know why. Graham adjusted his cufflinks out of habit. He didn't have meetings anymore. No boardrooms to conquer. Just the haunting emptiness of enough. Enough money. Enough space. Enough time to remember everything he couldn't fix. It wasn't until the late afternoon that he asked Henry to drive. No destination, just the city, just movement. And now, here he was, in the rain, watching a mother tremble beneath a busted grocery store light. He should have kept walking, but something about the way she shielded her baby, even from him, struck him hard in the chest. Have you ever seen someone so desperate that it changed something in you? What would you have done if you were in Graham's shoes? Comment below with your answer. We read every single one. Callie braced herself for the worst. Men didn't offer money in the rain without strings. She'd learned that hard and fast her first week living in a shelter. Even the kind ones had expectations wrapped in their kindness. But the man in the black coat didn't move any closer. He didn't leer or scan her body. He just stood there, wallet in hand, brows drawn together, not in pity, but something else, like recognition. "I'm not a beggar," she muttered, voice cracking as she shifted the baby in her arms. He nodded, almost respectfully. "I didn't think you were." The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but her body still trembled. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a damp piece of paper, the scribbled name of the cheapest formula, half smudged. She held it up like a flag of surrender. "That's all I need. Just that. I can pay you back someday." He stepped forward now, slowly, carefully, as if she might vanish. When he reached the overhang where she stood, the scent of warm leather and aftershave followed him. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice low. She hesitated. "Callie." He glanced down at the baby. "And the little one?" "Ellis. He's 3 months." Callie tightened her grip, her voice sharpening. "Look, if this is weird, just give me $10 and I'll leave. I don't want anything else from you." But Graham didn't move to hand over a bill. Instead, he looked at her, really looked. "You shouldn't have to beg for formula." Callie blinked at him, throat tight. "Yeah, well, try telling that to the universe." A long silence stretched between them. "I lost someone," he finally said. "A wife. And a baby. A few years ago." She looked at him now, truly seeing the lines beneath his eyes, the tired way his shoulders drooped under that expensive coat. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "No one should have to go through that." He nodded once. "I didn't know what to do with all the things she left behind. I didn't want to throw them away." Her brow furrowed, confused. "There's a can of formula in my apartment," he said quietly. "Still sealed. Been there for 2 years." Callie's breath caught. Why are you telling me this?" "Because I think you need it more than I need to keep pretending it means something." The silence between them grew thick, as if the rain itself held its breath. "Let me help," he said again. "Not just with formula." Callie stared at him. Was he insane? Delusional? Kindness like this didn't just happen, not to people like her. "What do you mean?" she asked cautiously. Graham looked at her, his face unreadable, except for the flicker of desperation beneath his calm. "I'll take you home, feed you, give you a warm place to stay, for as long as you need." Callie's eyes widened. Her first instinct was to grab Ellis and run. "Number, that's insane. You don't even know me." He nodded. "I don't. But I know what it feels like to be alone in the rain, wanting something you can't give the person you love." She swallowed. "And in exchange for what?" His eyes held hers. "Nothing. Unless you want more." The world seemed to slow. A car passed, its tires splashing in the puddles, but Callie barely registered it. "What are you saying?" Graham's voice lowered. "I'm saying if you want a fresh start, if you want a safe place to raise him, I can offer it. Not as a handout, not as charity." She was trembling now, not from cold, but from the weight of it all. Are you offering me a job, or... He exhaled like the truth had been burning in him for too long. A marriage. In name, at first, for shelter, for security. You can leave whenever you want, but I don't want to be alone anymore, and I don't think you do either. Callie blinked fast. Ellis stirred against her chest. A flash of lightning rippled across the sky. She felt something break in her chest. Pride, maybe, or fear. This man wasn't a savior. He was broken too, and broken people sometimes made the most honest offers. Graham's condo was nothing like Callie imagined. It wasn't marble floors and gleaming chandeliers like she'd seen in rich people magazines. It was sparse, almost hollow, tasteful furniture that hadn't been sat on in months. Art that looked expensive but cold. A piano in the corner, covered in dust. This way, he said quietly, leading her through the living room. The baby in her arms whimpered, so she bounced gently, scanning every shadow. You live here alone? She asked. He nodded. Since 2021. The elevator ride had been awkward enough, but now that she was inside, the air felt too still, like grief still lived in the walls. He pointed to a room down the hall. There's a guest room, fresh sheets. You can settle in there. Callie hesitated. I'm not staying long, just till Ellis is fed and dry. I understand, he said simply. She expected more, expected him to press, to throw the offer back in her face. But he didn't. In the guest room, she found a crib, not new, slightly worn on the corners, but clean. A folded blanket with little blue whales rested inside. She stared at it for a moment, heart thudding. She didn't ask who it belonged to. That night she stayed awake long after Ellis drifted off. She tucked a kitchen knife under her pillow, not because Graham had done anything wrong, but because life had taught her not to trust kind men too fast. In the morning, she woke to silence. A note on the counter read, There's cereal, eggs, and formula in the cabinet. I'm at work. Come and go as you need. Gee. She stared at it. Her fingers grazed the note like it might dissolve. He left? Just like that? She could have stolen half the kitchen and pawned it. Instead, she made a bottle and fed Ellis with trembling hands. Her plan was clear. Feed the baby, take a hot shower, and vanish. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the photo she noticed on the piano, Graham with a woman and an infant, all smiling. Maybe it was the warmth of clean towels, or the way the formula label read, Expiration 2025. Still new, still waiting for someone. She stayed 3 days. On the 4th, Graham returned from work to find her sitting on the floor, Ellis in her lap, a half-eaten piece of bread clutched in her hand. You okay? He asked. She stood quickly, defensive. He needed food. You don't have to explain, he said gently. The kitchen is yours. Her jaw tensed. You say that like you mean it, but people always change their tune once they realize I'm not temporary. I don't think you're temporary, Callie, he replied softly. Her throat tightened. You don't know anything about me. I know what it's like to lose everything, he said. And I know you're not here because you want to be. You're here because no one else gave you a door that stayed open. She looked at him then, really looked. I don't want pity. I'm not offering pity, he said. I'm offering partnership. Still on the table. She shook her head, voice sharp. Marriage, what does that even mean anymore? You don't know me. You don't know what I've done. Try me. Her silence was her answer. He sighed. You can leave whenever you want, but just know, staying wouldn't make you weak. It'd make you brave. Callie didn't reply. That night she packed her bag, but at the door she couldn't move. She looked back. At Ellis, asleep in a crib someone else's baby had never used. At the kitchen light Graham had left on, just in case she was afraid of the dark. And she sat down, bag still packed, keys still clenched in her hand. But she stayed. The storm hit on a Thursday. Thunder cracked like bones breaking in the sky. Power lines downed, streets flooded, and a city that never slowed came to a shuddering halt. It was all over the news. Warnings, shelter alerts, emergency services overwhelmed. Callie stood by the window, Ellis clinging to her chest, his tiny face pressed against her collarbone. Outside, water licked the tires of the parked cars. She could barely see the sidewalk. When Graham came in, soaked to the skin, he dropped his keys on the counter and stared out at the storm. "You can't go out in this," he said, not turning to look at her. "I wasn't going to." "Good." Lightning flashed. The power flickered and went out. Callie tensed. Ellis whimpered. Graham lit a candle and brought it into the living room. He motioned for her to sit. "I've got extra blankets," he said. "It'll get cold fast." "I'm used to cold," she replied. "Still, doesn't mean you should be." She accepted the blanket, more out of politeness than need, and curled up with Ellis on the couch. Graham sat across from her in an old armchair, a book in his lap he didn't bother to open. The silence grew thick. "You don't talk much," she said after a while. "I talk when there's something worth saying. And when there's not." He looked up, eyes catching the flicker of candlelight. "Then I listen." Callie paused. She wasn't used to that, being listened to. Not like that. Ella stirred in her arms, fussing, twisting. "He's hungry again," she whispered. "I've got more formula. No fridge, but it should still be fine." He disappeared into the dark kitchen. A moment later, he returned with a warm bottle. He'd boiled water on the gas stove. Callie took it with a soft, "Thank you," the words unfamiliar in her mouth. Hours passed. They shared soup by candlelight. Graham finally told her the story behind the dusty crib. "I had a son," he said quietly. "We lost him when he was 6 months old. SIDS. One morning he just didn't wake up." The candle between them flickered. "My wife never recovered," he continued. "She left. I didn't blame her. Grief, it changes people." Callie held Ellis tighter. "I don't know what to say," she murmured. "You don't have to say anything." She looked at him across the small space, the storm still raging outside but somehow quieter inside the room. And then, softly, "I was engaged once, before Ellis. He said he'd take care of us. But when I got sick, when I couldn't work, he split, said I was too much." Graham didn't react with pity, just quiet understanding. They sat like that for a long time. Two broken people holding truths they didn't want but couldn't shake. At 2 a.m., Ellis cried again, this time louder, shrill and panicked. Callie rushed to him, heart pounding. "What's wrong?" she muttered, bouncing him, pressing his forehead. Graham stood quickly. "He's burning up." "God, no. He was fine earlier." The candlelight made everything look more terrifying. Ellis's skin was flushed, eyes glassy. Callie felt herself unravel. "I need a hospital." "You can't drive out there. It's a flood zone." "I don't care," she snapped. "Callie, listen. There's a fire station down the block. I'll carry him. You just hold on to me." She didn't argue, just nodded, pale and shaking. In the storm, Graham pulled Ellis against his chest, shielding him from the wind with his coat. Callie gripped his arm, boots sloshing through shin-deep water. The fire station was dark, but a medic answered the door. "We've got a sick baby," Graham barked. They rushed inside. Warm hands, light, blankets, a thermometer, pulse checks. "It's a high fever," the medic confirmed. "Scary, but treatable. You brought him in time." Callie nearly collapsed against the wall. Ellis whimpered, but the fever broke hours later under watchful care. When they returned to the condo, soaked and exhausted, Graham said nothing, just handed her a towel. Callie turned to him in the hallway, voice cracked and dry. "You didn't have to do all that." "Yes, I did." "Why?" He looked at her for a long time. "Because I know what it's like to hold your whole world in your arms and not be able to save it. I wasn't going to let you feel that." She blinked, tears rising fast. "Thank you," she whispered. And for the first time, she let him hug her, not out of obligation, not for shelter, but because in the storm something stronger had taken root. The storm had passed. The city awoke slowly, limping through flood damage, empty shelves, and blinking streetlights. But inside Graham's apartment, something else had shifted. Callie made coffee that morning, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Ellis giggled from his blanket nest on the couch, waving a plush bear Graham had silently placed beside him during the night. He didn't mention where it came from. Neither did she. They didn't speak much, but silence no longer felt like absence. It felt like breathing. Later that day, Callie went looking for a towel in the linen closet and found the room instead. A door slightly ajar at the end of the hallway. It wasn't locked. It wasn't hidden. But it hadn't been mentioned. She hesitated, then pushed it open. The nursery was a museum. Dust coated the wooden crib. The wallpaper, faded blue with paper airplanes, peeled at the corners. On the changing table, tiny socks were still folded neatly in a wicker basket. A mobile hung motionless above the crib, planets and stars stilled in time. Her breath caught. She didn't mean to snoop. She really didn't. But her hand moved without permission, brushing a framed photo off the shelf. A baby boy, maybe 5 months. Big cheeks, wide eyes. And Graham, smiling beside him. Callie froze. That smile didn't exist anymore. Not in real life. She placed it back, carefully. Behind her, a quiet voice. "I haven't been in here in over a year." She turned, startled. Graham stood in the doorway, arms crossed, not angry, just hollow. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean. It's okay." He stepped into the room and sat on the edge of the crib. His fingers traced the worn wood. "His name was Jacob." Callie said nothing. She didn't want to break the moment. "I used to read to him every night, even when he was just weeks old. I figured he didn't understand a word, but I wanted him to know my voice." He looked up, a faraway storm in his eyes. "My wife said it was the one thing that made him stop crying. My voice. That's all I had to give him, really. Not money, not promises, just that." He paused. "When he died, I stopped speaking." For weeks, Callie stepped closer, quietly. No platitudes. No, "he's in a better place." Just presence. "I think," she said, barely above a whisper, "he knew he was loved." Graham's jaw tightened. That's not always enough. Callie sat on the floor beside the crib, Ellis babbling quietly in the hallway behind her. "You're wrong," she whispered. "Sometimes love's the only thing that saves a person." He looked down at her, eyes locking. Something between them changed, deepened. It wasn't romance, not yet. It was recognition. Later that night, Graham handed her a journal, leather-bound, weathered. "It's his," he said. "Well, mine, technically. But I wrote letters to him. Every day for 6 months. I never stopped, even after." Callie opened the first page. "Jacob, today you drooled on my tie before I left for work. I wore it anyway, because it reminded me of you." She read through tears, then looked up. "This is beautiful. It's all I had left of him. You still write?" "Not for a long time." She handed it back. "You should start again." He hesitated, then slowly nodded. Later, she showed him the photo strip in her wallet. A younger Callie, maybe 20, pressing kisses to a man's cheek. The last frame, him walking away. His name was Alex, she said. He proposed the day I told him I was pregnant. I thought that meant something. Graham listened, quiet. When I got sick, morning sickness, dizzy spells, all of it. He said he needed space. Then I caught him with someone else. Her voice trembled. He said Ellis wasn't his responsibility, that I tricked him. Graham's fists clenched, but he didn't interrupt. I felt so stupid, for loving him, for believing. You weren't stupid. I was desperate. They sat in silence. Then Graham, soft. That's not the same. I sold my phone, my ring. I slept in laundromats. Graham swallowed. And still, you never gave him up. She smiled, sad and brave. Never. The next morning, Callie found a new note on the kitchen table. Wrote again today. First time in 372 days. About the baby. And you. Turns out grief and hope can share the same page. She folded it carefully and slipped it in her pocket. Not because it was romantic, but because it felt like a beginning. Do you think people can find healing through each other's brokenness? Or do we need to heal alone first? Share your thoughts below. Someone out there might need your light. The mornings became routine. Warm bottles, quiet coffee, soft jazz on low volume. Graham kept his distance at first, observing from the kitchen island while Callie played peekaboo with Ellis on the rug. But his silence felt different now, less guarded, more present. Callie noticed. She didn't push, but she also didn't stop smiling when he slowly moved closer, day by day. Thursday. They cooked dinner together, not fancy, just spaghetti and garlic bread from scratch. Graham chopped the parsley too thick. Ellis smeared sauce on the wall. Callie laughed harder than she had in months. And Graham, he watched her, really watched her. I used to think laughter meant I was forgetting him, he said as she wiped flour from her cheek. But tonight, it didn't feel like forgetting. Callie set the spoon down and looked up. Grief isn't a grave, it's a garden. He blinked. Some things have to die so others can grow. That doesn't mean you stop missing the seeds. He smiled, just a little, but it reached his eyes. Friday. The power went out, city grid maintenance. Graham lit candles, dozens of them. His living room glowed like a cathedral. Callie curled on the couch with Ellis asleep on her chest, a blanket draped over them. You're good with him, Graham said from his armchair, voice hushed. She looked down at her son. He saved me. Every day I thought I couldn't keep going. I looked at him, and I kept going. You ever wish you'd left him at the hospital, let someone else raise him? Her eyes welled. Not once. He nodded, eyes on the flames. My wife, she used to hum to Jacob when he cried. Sometimes I still hear her, in my head, when it's quiet enough. Callie whispered, Do you ever hum to yourself? A long pause. I used to. I could try again. She smiled gently. I think you should. That night, Graham hummed while washing bottles. A soft, unsure lullaby. The melody cracked halfway through. But he kept going. Saturday, they spent the afternoon at the rooftop garden Graham forgot he had. Ellis crawled toward flower pots, giggling at butterflies. Callie sat cross-legged in the sun, her jeans torn at the knee, her hair piled in a messy bun. Can I ask you something? She said. Always. If you hadn't lost Jacob, do you think you'd still be alone? He considered that. I think I would have built a fortress around my life, filled it with noise, parties, cars, anything but stillness. She nodded. Sometimes, I think being broken is the only way we notice the quiet things. He looked at her, and something shifted. Not the room, not the air. Him. That night, Graham tucked Ellis into the guest room crib without being asked. He sang softly, off-key, tender. Callie watched from the doorway, and when their eyes met, there was no tension, no shame, just gratitude. Sunday. The apartment smelled like cinnamon and baby shampoo. Callie folded laundry on the couch. Graham cleaned windows with a quiet satisfaction that surprised even him. "You ever notice," she said, "how Ellis only cries when I leave the room, but never when you do?" Graham looked at her. "You think he's already attached to me?" She nodded. "He knows who's safe." That stayed with him all day. Later, after Ellis fell asleep, they sat on the balcony together. 2 blankets, 2 mugs of tea. A single silence stretched wide between them, comfortable, not cold. "I don't know what this is," Callie said, not looking at him, "but it doesn't feel like just surviving anymore." Graham didn't respond right away. Instead, he reached out slowly, gently, just enough for their hands to touch. Not grasp, not hold, just touch. "Whatever it is," he whispered, "it feels like breathing again." The wind rustled leaves above them. Ellis stirred in his sleep inside, and for the first time in 2 years, Graham closed his eyes and didn't see a coffin. He saw a crib, and next to it, Callie, alive, smiling, still here. It started with a phone call. Graham was in the kitchen feeding Ellis a banana when his landline rang. An unfamiliar number. He almost ignored it. But something tugged. "Hello?" A sharp voice on the other end. "Mr. Delacroix, this is Janet Withers, CPS. We've received an anonymous report about a child residing at your address. Is there a reason a woman and infant are living in your home without documentation or legal guardianship terms?" Graham's chest went cold. 30 minutes later, Callie stood frozen in the doorway, Ellis cradled against her shoulder. "What do you mean someone called CPS?" she whispered. Graham turned from the window, jaw tight. "They said it was anonymous, but they know your name, and Ellis's. They know you're not on any lease. They know you don't have legal custody paperwork. They're investigating." Callie's face drained of color. "But I'm his mother. That doesn't matter without proof." He hadn't meant for it to sound so clinical, but his panic was clawing at his voice. She stepped back like he'd struck her. "So what are you saying? That you think I'm a threat to my son?" "No, Callie, I'm saying we need to get ahead of this. They could take him. They will take him if they find one thing out of place." Her voice cracked. "And where would I go, Graham? I have no papers, no job, no rights in this building. You think I'll win against the state?" He didn't answer, because he didn't know. The next morning, she packed her things. Just diapers, Ellis's clothes, formula, and a backpack. She refused his help. "Don't," she said when he tried to carry her bag. "Don't make this harder by pretending it's not what you want. That's not fair. No. What's not fair is that you said I was safe, that Ellis was safe here, and now I'm one anonymous phone call away from losing him. I'm trying to protect you both by reminding me I don't belong." He froze, because she was right, not about his heart, but about what he'd said, what he'd failed to say. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "Sorry doesn't unmake trauma, Graham. It just delays it." She kissed Ellis's head, walked out into the rain, didn't even look back. That night, Graham didn't eat, didn't sleep. He wandered the apartment, finding her in everything. A pacifier under the couch, a recipe scrawled on a post-it. "Remember more salt." A scarf still hanging on the coat rack. Her scent still lingered in the air, lavender and cinnamon. And Ellis's laughter echoed in his skull like a ghost. The pain he'd run from since Jacob's death. It came back, but this time it had her face. 2 days passed, He called. She didn't answer. He drove through shelters. No luck. He even called the CPS number again, left a message, asked if they could connect him with her social worker. They declined. On the third night, he returned to the rooftop garden. The wind was cold, the sky indifferent. He stared out over the city and whispered, "I let them both down." Again, his voice cracked. "I promised I wouldn't love anyone I couldn't protect, and I did both." A neighbor approached the next morning, a quiet woman on floor 5. "You the guy who lives with the girl and baby?" He turned, startled. "Why?" She hesitated. "I overheard Mrs. Aldrich from 4B bragging in the laundry room. Said she called CPS because she didn't want poor squatters lowering property values. Thought you'd like to know." Graham's blood boiled. And then, something inside him clicked. He wasn't helpless. He had money, lawyers, resources. He could fight, but not alone, not without them. The lawyer didn't ask many questions, just reviewed the details, nodded, and said, "If you're serious about guardianship protection for the child and legal safety for the mother, we can expedite a marriage petition." Even under these circumstances, Graham didn't flinch. "I'm serious." He was already at the bank by 10 a.m., cashing a stock. By 1 p.m., he had found the emergency shelter she was listed at. After 3 dead ends, a cash donation to the front desk, and the kind glance of a counselor who whispered, "Room 2C." He stood at her door for nearly a full minute. His hand lifted, dropped, lifted again. He knocked. A pause. Then the door creaked open. She looked different. Pale, tired, still beautiful, but dulled by exhaustion and the kind of worry that settled in a mother's bones. Ellis was asleep on her chest. Her eyes went wide when she saw him. "Graham, I found out who made the call." She said nothing. "And I know how to make sure no one can ever take Ellis away again." Still nothing. So he stepped closer, pulled a folded paper from his coat. "I filed a guardianship appeal and a marriage affidavit. I know we never talked about it like this. I know it sounds crazy." Ellis stirred in his sleep inside, and for the first time in 2 years, Graham closed his eyes and didn't see a coffin. He saw a crib, and next to it, Callie, alive, smiling, still here. It started with a phone call. Graham was in the kitchen feeding Ellis a banana when his landline rang. An unfamiliar number. He almost ignored it. But something tugged. "Hello?" A sharp voice on the other end. "Mr. Delacroix, this is Janet Withers, CPS. We've received an anonymous report about a child residing at your address. Is there a reason a woman and infant are living in your home without documentation or legal guardianship terms?" Graham's chest went cold. 30 minutes later, Callie stood frozen in the doorway, Ellis cradled against her shoulder. "What do you mean someone called CPS?" she whispered. Graham turned from the window, jaw tight. "They said it was anonymous, but they know your name, and Ellis's. They know you're not on any lease. They know you don't have legal custody paperwork. They're investigating." Callie's face drained of color. "But I'm his mother. That doesn't matter without proof." He hadn't meant for it to sound so clinical, but his panic was clawing at his voice. She stepped back like he'd struck her. "So what are you saying? That you think I'm a threat to my son?" "No, Callie, I'm saying we need to get ahead of this. They could take him. They will take him if they find one thing out of place." Her voice cracked. "And where would I go, Graham? I have no papers, no job, no rights in this building. You think I'll win against the state?" He didn't answer, because he didn't know. The next morning, she packed her things. Just diapers, Ellis's clothes, formula, and a backpack. She refused his help. "Don't," she said when he tried to carry her bag. "Don't make this harder by pretending it's not what you want. That's not fair. No. What's not fair is that you said I was safe, that Ellis was safe here, and now I'm one anonymous phone call away from losing him. I'm trying to protect you both by reminding me I don't belong." He froze, because she was right, not about his heart, but about what he'd said, what he'd failed to say. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "Sorry doesn't unmake trauma, Graham. It just delays it." She kissed Ellis's head, walked out into the rain, didn't even look back. That night, Graham didn't eat, didn't sleep. He wandered the apartment, finding her in everything. A pacifier under the couch, a recipe scrawled on a post-it. "Remember more salt." A scarf still hanging on the coat rack. Her scent still lingered in the air, lavender and cinnamon. And Ellis's laughter echoed in his skull like a ghost. The pain he'd run from since Jacob's death. It came back, but this time it had her face. 2 days passed. He called. She didn't answer. He drove through shelters. No luck. He even called the CPS number again, left a message, asked if they could connect him with her social worker. They declined. On the third night, he returned to the rooftop garden. The wind was cold, the sky indifferent. He stared out over the city and whispered, "I let them both down." Again. His voice cracked. "I promised I wouldn't love anyone I couldn't protect, and I did both." A neighbor approached the next morning, a quiet woman on floor 5. "You the guy who lives with the girl and baby?" He turned, startled. "Why?" She hesitated. "I overheard Mrs. Aldrich from 4B bragging in the laundry room. Said she called CPS because she didn't want poor squatters lowering property values. Thought you'd like to know." Graham's blood boiled. And then, something inside him clicked. He wasn't helpless. He had money, lawyers, resources. He could fight, but not alone, not without them. The lawyer didn't ask many questions, just reviewed the details, nodded, and said, "If you're serious about guardianship protection for the child and legal safety for the mother, we can expedite a marriage petition." Even under these circumstances, Graham didn't flinch. "I'm serious." He was already at the bank by 10 a.m., cashing a stock. By 1 p.m., he had found the emergency shelter she was listed at. After 3 dead ends, a cash donation to the front desk, and the kind glance of a counselor who whispered, "Room 2C." He stood at her door for nearly a full minute. His hand lifted, dropped, lifted again. He knocked. A pause. Then the door creaked open. She looked different. Pale, tired, still beautiful, but dulled by exhaustion and the kind of worry that settled in a mother's bones. Ellis was asleep on her chest. Her eyes went wide when she saw him. "Graham, I found out who made the call." She said nothing. "And I know how to make sure no one can ever take Ellis away again." Still nothing. So he stepped closer, pulled a folded paper from his coat. "I filed a guardianship appeal and a marriage affidavit. I know we never talked about it like this. I know it sounds crazy, but if I'm legally your husband, they can't challenge your right to stay. Not here. Not in my home." Her voice was a whisper. "You'd marry me, just to protect us?" "No." His voice broke. "I'd marry you because I already chose you. You and Ellis. I just didn't have the courage to say it when it mattered." She looked down at her baby, cradled close to her heart. "And what if you regret it? What if one day you wake up and remember all the ways I'm broken?" He stepped forward. "Then I'll remind myself how I broke too, and how you taught me I could still build something new." Silence. Then a single tear ran down her cheek. She wiped it, laughing softly. "I don't have a dress. I don't have a ring. Do you have anything else?" He nodded. I have a heart that's never felt more sure. The shelter chapel was small, just a chaplain, a witness, and a baby fussing in Callie's arms. She wore a simple dress borrowed from a volunteer. Graham wore a button-down with a wrinkled collar. Their vows were messy, raw, stuttered through nerves and emotion, and perfect. He looked into her eyes and whispered, I promise to choose you, even when you can't see why. I promise to fight for Ellis, for you, and for every second of this life we never planned. She clutched his hands and whispered back, I promise not to run when things break. I promise to love you through every scar you carry. And I promise to believe this love was meant to find me. Ellis burped in the middle of their kiss. They both laughed through tears. It was the best kind of beginning. That night back at the apartment, Graham tucked Ellis into his crib. Callie watched from the doorway, arms crossed gently. He stood, brushing hair from his son's forehead. Because yes, he had started calling him that now, quietly, privately. He likes lullabies, she whispered. Then he's going to love our first family tradition. He walked over to the piano, lifted the cover. The same notes he hadn't touched since Jacob. His fingers hovered. Then they began to play, software simple, safe. Callie stepped beside him and rested her head on his shoulder. And for the first time in years, his music didn't hurt, it healed. Do you believe love can start from the ashes of broken lives? Would you marry someone to save them and fall in love after? Comment below if you think love is more about the decision than the feeling. 6 months later, it wasn't raining this time. The sun peeked out from behind a silk gray sky. The same grocery store stood tall, only this time a mother wasn't standing in the cold begging for formula. She was pushing a cart beside a man with a stroller in one hand and a diaper bag slung over his designer coat. The cashier smiled as she scanned a brand of baby formula. Someone's growing, she said cheerily. Graham chuckled. He eats like he's got a mortgage to pay. Callie laughed, gently elbowing him. Takes after his father. Neither of them corrected it. Not anymore. They walked home slowly. The apartment felt fuller now, not crowded, just lived in. Soft blankets, toys tucked into corners, a piano always open. Callie stopped in the hallway and looked at the nursery door. She turned. I got the call today. Graham looked up from unbuttoning his cuffs. Her voice was soft, scared. They finalized the adoption papers. He's legally ours now, fully. Graham crossed the room, cupped her cheeks. Tears brimmed in her eyes. I thought I'd always live on borrowed love, that someone would knock on the door and take him, or take you. He leaned in, forehead to hers. They'd have to go through me, and I don't plan on ever letting go. She melted into his arms. Later that night, after dinner, and Ellis smearing mashed carrots on the walls like abstract art, they lay on the couch in silence. Callie rested her head on his chest. You never asked why I didn't run. I figured if I asked, I might ruin it. Well, she smiled. The night they took him, when I watched you scream at strangers, pound your fists into walls, when I saw that you hurt like I hurt. She looked up. I realized broken people can still be whole together. He kissed her knuckles. She kissed the scar on his shoulder. Ellis giggled from his crib, and everything felt exactly as it was meant to be. 3 years later, the woman at the shelter almost didn't recognize her. Hair glossy, a light summer dress. Holding Ellis, now a chatty 3-year-old with crayons in one hand and a juice pouch in the other. She looked at the front desk and smiled. I brought something. She opened the bag. 6 cans of formula, 2 boxes of diapers, and a handwritten note. To the next mother who thinks no one will see her, someone will. Hang on. See. The receptionist blinked. Are you? Callie smiled. Just someone who knows what it's like to beg in the rain. Outside, Graham waited beside a modest SUV, waving as Ellis sprinted toward him, shouting, "Daddy! Daddy!" She turned and caught a glimpse of her reflection in the glass door. No longer the woman with the rain-soaked hoodie and hollow cheeks. Now, she looked like a wife, a mother, a survivor, a woman who was chosen, a woman who chose herself. That night, Graham sat at the piano with Ellis on his lap, tapping random keys. Callie brought out a small cake with 3 candles and lit them, one by one. "For the boy who saved us," she whispered. Graham looked at her, love swelling like a tide in his chest. And softly, the melody from that first lullaby returned. This time, Ellis sang along. "Have you ever been seen when you felt invisible? Do you believe the people we're meant to find come exactly when we're ready to choose them?" Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your story might help someone hold on a little longer.